Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. The phone number to hang out with us, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. And we're going to get straight to Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contract. Mike, the NBA punishment process is just an absolute joke, and they proved it again today. They fined the LA Lakers $500,000 for violating the league's anti-tampering rule. What you need to know, everybody, is that this isn't about the first issue. We all saw and heard Magic Johnson hanging out with Jimmy Kimmel. We heard him talking a little bit about Paul George, and some people thought that, no, this is not about this. This is about after that. They decided that after that, the rules were broken, and the general manager, Rob Pelinka, contacted the agent for Paul George, and for that, the Lakers get a $500,000 fine, and $500,000 to an NBA team is a joke.
What are you talking about, man? It's $500,000. They got him good, got him where it hurts. This is clearly going to curb the NBA's tampering problem and really put a stop to all the shenanigans going on out here in these NBA off seasons, except it's not at all because no one's ever taken tampering that seriously. So they weren't going to start now. All this does is kind of signal. We love precedent is like another one of those buzzwords in sports, especially during the offseason, a.k.a. CBA season, a.k.a. the rules refresher for everyone before real sports action gets going. And one of the things you always heard talked about, whether it's the Zeke Elliott case that's going on right now, Vontaze Burfict getting suspended for 5 games that got reduced to 3 under the new rules, everyone loves defending precedents. And this is another one of those where it says, all right, if we actually catch you out here tampering and you have to go above and beyond to make that even a possibility, this is what you have to look forward to.
I feel like this is the NBA coming in and saying, man, if you're going to be so blatant that we have to do something, here's the $500,000. Now, the $500,000, again, this is the second offense, essentially. The first offense, which we now know, according to the NBA, received a warning, was this appearance by Magic Johnson on Jimmy Kimmel Live. This is what Magic said.
Who are you looking for? Paul George? Is it Chris Paul are you looking at? Maybe Teen Wolf? Do you remember him? He was really good.
I wish I could talk about all those guys.
But you'd be contract tampering now.
Exactly.
Did you have, when you started this job, did they sit you down and say, okay, so here are some things you have to know? You can't do an interview and say you want the specific player.
That's right.
And did you have to learn?
Yeah, I had to go to school. I had to go to CBA school, salary cap school, and tampering school.
What constitutes tampering? Like if you're on vacation and you run into Paul George, are you not allowed to speak to him?
No, we're going to say hi because we know each other.
I see.
You just can't say, hey, I want you to come to the Lakers, even though I'm going to be winking like... You know what that means, right?
That got Magic Johnson a warning. I mean, even Kimmel knew what tampering was, and Magic Johnson just told you he went to tampering school. He obviously failed.
He's just sitting there like, ha, 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 I'm Magic. Yeah, we can't be out here tampering, but, I see Paul George around. Guys about town. Paul George likes L.A. I like L.A. We got similar interests like that. We might end up at the same spot. I don't see anything wrong with this. Wink, wink, back slap. But that is kind of the weird thing, right? Because Magic's just used to having been able to be this guy. He's just gotten to be Magic out in the public for a long time. And he's got the ownership stake in the Dodgers, and he runs all these businesses. And he's a guy that just in general has a lot of friends. And to be honest, it's cool to say you're friends with Magic on the other end too. And so he's got this awe and this draw to him. And it's hard to probably turn that off now in the role he's in, and that becomes an interesting part of this, is how does Magic adjust to this?
Well, but the funny thing is, Magic's a smart guy. You just mentioned he owns all these businesses. All he had to do in that interview was leave the last line out. I mean, he can come in and say, no, I know him. We're going to see each other. We'll say hi. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. But I can't say anything about wanting him to play for the Lakers. And then, bam. If he cuts that one line shorter, he's fine.
But that's now, that's like being in the NFL and the drug testing policy. Like, the drug testing policy is a joke in the NFL, but once you get popped, anything else that comes up, as minor as it might be and as much as it may not have gotten you in trouble before, starts to ring a little louder. With Magic, this was what got them a warning. Like, Magic's role in all of this was that. Rob Pelinka went out after and actually did the dirt that got them fined for this. Like, he went and contacted the agent. He did the actual sort of tampering in all this.
Well, and Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Here's some Straight Talk. Rob Pelinka used to be an agent. So you can't screw up tampering when you used to be an agent. Like he's not screwing up. This isn't a mistake. This is a blatant, I don't care. I mean, that's a substantial difference. And besides the fact that he doesn't care, and despite the fact that he's coming out and saying, yeah, I don't follow the rules, we're the Lakers, we do what we want to, the fine is $500,000. I feel like the toilet paper budget for that organization is more than $500,000 a year.
But that's what I mean. So now you've got no incentive on the back end. That's the precedent that you set. It's sort of like the parent that just doesn't want to be bothered with the fact that knowing that their kid is, going out and partying and carrying on in high school. Just don't leave the beer cans in my front lawn and we'll be cool. Make sure I don't know about it. But if you're going to go on national TV and then back it up with the actions, we have to come out and do something. But it's basically enough something to say, just make sure you're a little more covert about it, because that's a good point with Rob Pelinka. Being an agent, this is another kind of weird gray area for him. Like, if he's talking to his agent, he's probably talking to a guy he had a relationship before. He knows better, but he also kind of understands you operate in a weird gray area, and you've got to be cognizant. Like, when I was at Notre Dame, when I was around with my friends and we'd go out to dinner with my parents or something like that, we would always have to be careful if my friends were there because they're my parents. If I were to go out to dinner with any number of my teammates' other parents and they wanted to pay for it, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if my parents do, because they're technically donors to the school in their own small way, that pops up as something that could have been potentially an NCAA infraction. And so normally when you think about it as innocently as you do, is saying, well, that's just Mike's parents. Like, no, you can't treat it that way because you know the NCAA doesn't. Magic and Rob just learned that the NBA is not going to play, as I say this in air quotes, not going to play about that, as they clearly don't care.
He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. It's the right time with Bomani Jones. So at some point, I feel like this is a little bit like the anti-NFL punishment. You know how we see the NFL makes punishment, everybody makes a big deal about it, then they appeal it, then we end up talking about that punishment for weeks. It makes the process drag on, and then we don't know what's happening. This is one of those things where it feels like they picked a dollar amount that's so low, the Lakers look at it and they're like, all right, we'll just write that check. I mean, it just goes away.
Well, because the punishment sort of fit the crime, and maybe not in the actual sense, because in theory, tampering with a player's contract is something that you should want to guard against, but the NBA has long since, I mean, that quote-unquote legal tampering period that we always hear about has kind of been the mockery that this has been for a while now. And so you've got something that people generally don't look at as that serious, and then you back it up with a fine that matches that. This isn't deflated footballs getting you a multi-game suspension in the NFL where it doesn't seem like the punishment fits the crime, and then you have all of these weird sort of counterbalances when you've got off-the-field things that require a larger suspension looking the same. Like, that's where the NFL gets in trouble, and the NBA is like, no, we're going to treat this with the relative level of severity that we think it deserves, and it deserves a $500,000 fine.
But you have to look at it at some point and say...
punch the mic?
Yeah, I did. I punched the mic. I'm so fired up about this. I punched the mic. The mic fell on me. I can't handle technology.
Jason Fitz hates tampering.
If you're going to sign a player for $200 million in that range, you're going to give some guy $200 million, whatever NBA superstar you want. And you look around the league now and you say, okay, if I want to get a head start on that process, it's going to cost me $1 million. It's worth it. I mean, if it gets you a head start on whatever player you want next year, you're looking at it now saying, okay, $500,000 is the fine for talking to an agent when I can't. I'd pay that easily on top of my $200 million contract to get an advanced head start on the signing of Paul George. You talk about precedent. It's a terrible precedent by the NBA.
When you're coming out and you're getting ready to sign an agent and go into the sports world, one of the things that everyone is very quick to tell you is that money the agent spends on your training, the money spends, taking you out to meals, whatever they put into you, you're not expected to give them that back even if things go south. Like, if you don't get signed and nothing works out, they shouldn't be expecting to get that money back. They tell you that's the cost of doing business. And you found out that, like you said, the cost of doing business sometimes for the potential of a $200 million max contract player might be $500,000. It's the cost of doing business that I think, based on those dollar amounts, they're willing to incur.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. All of our guests on The Right Time appear by the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. One of our favorites covering the game tonight. You could see Ohio State, Indiana tonight on ESPN. Ryan McGee joins us. And Ryan, we'll start right out of the gate. Since both Mike Golic Jr. and I have had the opportunity to hang out with you on your weekend show, which one of us do you like better?
See, that's not cool. I'm not sure what to say. So both of you bailed out Marty at some point because I think we all agree he's more important than any of us. So when he bailed, each one of you stepped in, and I appreciate that. And I'm not going there. Hey, I tell you this though, I feel like it's Monday down at ESPNU all of a sudden. Like all of a sudden, I'm like just sitting in the green room and talking to you guys because that's what we did all last year.
It does feel oddly familiar right now, and I'm into it. But listen, you bring up Marty, and we all talk about Marty being the most interesting guy at ESPN and seeing him all over the place. But the last time I heard you calling into your own show, you were doing it from a train car bathroom overseas. So have you one up that now? Do you feel like you're giving Marty a run for his money?
Yeah, I've told him, I said, he's called into the show from Shanghai after talking to Ronaldo, and he's called into the show from with the World Special Olympics, and he was with someone. I said, no one will ever call in again from the Glacier Express train toilet, and while someone was beating on the door because they were mad that there was an American in there yapping.
Incredible. Talking to Ryan McGee on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So you are not in the Glacier Express right now. You are getting ready to cover Ohio State, Indiana. For the rest of us college football fans, we're all thankful this is getting going, but the conversation Fitz and I were just having, J.T. Barrett, the Ohio State quarterback, it seems like is coming into this season under the radar, forgotten about, however you want to phrase it. What's the sense of that around this Ohio State team?
Yeah, no, you're right. Listen, I was in Columbus yesterday, and literally while I'm talking to you guys, I'm pulling into my parking spot in Bloomington. So I made the drive over today. And, no, they absolutely, that's the case, and they kind of dig it. It's hard to imagine a program like Ohio State, finding chip on the shoulder, we get no respect motivation. But that's exactly what they've done. I mean, listen, I'm like you guys. I have one copy of every college football preview magazine, published, known to man every summer. And Barrett was on the cover of one of them. And everybody else either had Mayfield or they had, even where I live in North Carolina, they have Hunter Renfrow from Clemson. I mean, they got all these guys except for Barrett. And I really think he kind of digs it. Now, listen, I saw Ohio State 3 times last year. And they were 2-1 in those games. And one of those games was at Wisconsin, and it was an overtime win. He spent the entire game on his back. And so it doesn't matter how good he is if he doesn't stay upright. And so I think if goal number 1 this year is to make sure that he has a chance to be the guy that we saw, his freshman year. And so I like him a lot. And he reminds me a lot of like Chris Leak or Tebow or some of the other great Urban Meyer quarterbacks. And so, again, if they can keep him on keep him standing upright, I think he can take care of business. He'll do that tonight. It's just a question later in the year if they can do it.
Brian, what do you think? Can Ohio State win a national championship with J.T. Barrett?
They can. I think they totally can. But I think that's but again, that's the biggest question. I mean, when I saw them last year, their defense was really good. And I'm not talking about the playoff loss, but their defense was really good. They have a hard time scoring points, and I never felt like it was his problem. In fact, I go back to that Wisconsin game. He single-handedly won that Wisconsin game, and I wrote that night, which was, he did what great quarterbacks do. He just at some point went, okay, if I have to do all this, I'm going to have to do it. And he learned a lesson on a bad pass in the first half, and then that's the exact pass he threw, corrected, that won the game in overtime.
Ryan, looking at now the relationship that's always important in college, especially between quarterback and offensive coordinator, they bring Kevin Wilson over. How much of an effect do you think he has on that offense this year? And what's the scenario like for him tonight going up against his former team where he was a head coach for so long and left under less than ideal circumstances, let's say?
Yeah, you talk about chip on the shoulder, and he recruited every kid he's going to be coaching against tonight. He knows where the weak spots are. Now, that being said, you could argue the other side of that, which is that, at Indiana, they also know him pretty well. But and there's motivation on that side too, because like you say, it was not. I mean, it was an ugly situation. And I've been in town an hour, and someone had brought it up to me just like at the burger joint. So it's going to be an interesting time. But just football wise, he's what Barrett needs because he had no talent at Indiana. And there were times last year where Indiana was moving the football. And, they were top 50 ranking in offense, which is the first time I can think of in forever that's happened down here, certainly not since the Cam Cameron days. And so I think he is the answer because he's going to open it up a little bit because, like I say, listen, since the departure of Tom Herman, it's been wide open is not how I would term that.
You guys can follow him on Twitter at ESPN McGee. Covering the game tonight, which obviously you can see on ESPN coverage all day as we get you set for the beginning of college football. Ryan, thanks for taking some time and joining us, man. Be safe out there. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm looking at something I thought I'd never see, boys. I'm just looking at football traffic jam in Bloomington, Indiana.
Oh, that's
what
amazing.
A time to be alive.
Oh, that's great. Great stuff from Ryan. Who would have thought? But that's what's happening. We're all stoked for it. He believes in JT Barrett. And believes in this process. I'm still looking at it, seeing tonight there's only a couple of outcomes that are going to have some sort of a result for the world to analyze. If JT Barrett looks terrible, we're going to flip out over it. Unfortunately, if he comes out and looks fantastic, I still don't think he's going to get a ton of benefit of the doubt in the process because it's Indiana, right? I mean, I think at some point there's not a huge win for Ohio State here other than the fact that they just come out to get a win.
Ohio State's going to win this game handily, I'd imagine. Now, they're going out on a limb. They're opening up the season with a Big Ten opponent, which is something that doesn't happen with a ton of regularity. But this Ohio State team is so talented. They were one of the youngest teams, if not the youngest team in college football last year. We're going to see the payoff of that. And the headline is going to be college football season is here, and it looks exactly like what we expected.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My Golic Jr., I'm Jason Fitz. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Hang out with us. We love everybody. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776 ESPN Radio. Presented by Progressive Insurance. Guys, also don't forget, it's an opportunity right now where you can help people. The Hurricane Harvey, let's help Houston. We can all come together by going to www.redcross.org/ESPN. Or if you just want to use your phone right now, text 90999 is the number. Text the word Harvey in all caps. Makes a $10 donation on the Disney Day of Giving. We'd like to help Houston as much as we can. So, Mike, I'm looking around, and I'm looking at, shoe news. We were talking yesterday about how you can now rent jerseys. But if you're going to do that, you got to have some sweet, sweet kicks, as the kids say. And really, I just say that to watch you roll your eyes. Right?
No, the kids don't say that.
That's the goal. So sweet, sweet kicks, as the kids say. And so I'm looking at it, and the Ball family back in the news. But it's not the way I expected, because what we now know is the youngest Ball brother, LaMelo, 16 years old, high school junior, will now have his own signature shoe, and it will be part of the Big Baller brand. And now, there are several layers to this, because you were just talking about how it's complicated when you were in school and you wanted to go out to dinner, and you have to be worried about somebody can't just buy your dinner because you're always worried about any rules with academic eligibility. Well,
yeah, no one ever bought us dinner. Never happened.
Good, because it's important that not happen, because you have to worry about your eligibility. Apparently, LeVar not worried about that at all, and his quote is, "We'll worry about it when we get there. Who cares? If he can't play, then he can't play. It doesn't mean he'll stop working out and getting better." When you see that LaMelo has his own shoe, what hits you about that?
Well, it's only $395, and I'm going to be honest, if I'm just looking at the shoe and taking it as face value, it's kind of nice. Like, I am much more inclined to look twice at this one than I was at the Zo 2s. Like, the Zo 2s weren't as bad as a lot of people made them out to be in my mind, but looking at these basically look like the Under Armour cross trainers. They just have like a snakeskin pattern instead. Are they is the Big Baller band kind of learning? Are they evolving? Are they just clearly poaching shoe sort of ideas from other companies? I don't know, but they're kind of nice. The only thing better, though, is the ridiculous Big Baller brand promotional video that went along with this, which includes, by the way, a brand new verse from Lonzo. Lonzo Ball is on the track. It happened.
And you're happy with that? Like, you want? I mean, if I'm Lonzo, I'm conflicted, by the way, because if I'm Lonzo, my little brother just got a shoe that's cooler than mine on this whole brand. I mean, there's this. You're right. Maybe they're learning and they're figuring it out, but that means that Lonzo is going to be sort of the test study in every one of these cases. And here he is with LaMelo getting a cooler shoe. I mean, I would be angry if I'm Lonzo.
It's all just set up for them to drop the Zo 1s. Like, we all keep wondering where the ZO1s were and how we skipped to the 2s. This is the perfect dot. You go back, you drop that one. Like, he's got another in a long line of shoes. He knows his brother's in high school. He's going to get one right now. The interesting thing now is, like, going to, like, in a serious component, although I do want to get back to Alonzo's verse before, because like, that, too, like, unexpectedly kind of nice. Like, at least the flow was there. I don't know, like, you know, everything else we can debate, but I listened to it. I was like, all right, he kind of sounds like he knows what he's doing. And that's coming from someone that's heard a lot of really bad amateur locker room rap.
Would you?
Like, a lot of it. Like, every locker room has got that handful of guys that believes, like, they're all going to make it and, like, gets, like, has a bootleg studio set up or something, and it's all usually really bad. This wasn't that.
Would you spend 99 cents to pay for, I'm not talking Spotify, you millennial. I'm talking about, would you spend 99 cents to pay for Lonzo spitting his flow on a hot track?
Not if you phrase it like that. But, like, listen, I've heard a couple of the things that have come out from Lonzo, and I haven't hated it. So I'm kind of conflicted here. And these shoes, I don't hate. And the thing I now wonder aloud is, so there's no rules in that govern California high school sports that preclude LaMelo Ball from having his own shoe on the market. But when he attends UCLA, the NC2A could have an issue with this. Like, how does this play? This kid can't go to college and wear his own signature shoe, and I can't imagine they're going to be comfortable with him profiting, considering we just had a punter from, I think, USF that just got shown the door because he wanted to profit off YouTube videos. Like, this is even more overt and in your face.
Yeah, and NCAA spokesperson Emily Janes talked to Darren Ravel earlier and said, this is the quote, generally speaking, a college athlete or prospect paid for the use of their athletics, reputation, or ability risks their future eligibility in that sport. This includes profiting from the sale of items bearing the young person's name. NCAA rules, however, do allow prospects to promote commercial products prior to enrollment, providing it is not for pay. So this sort of begs a very interesting case study of what do you do when it's your brother's brand, and how do they pay it, and where does the money go? I mean, you're conspiracy theorist.
We don't know
here.
if he is getting paid. That's
right.
The one thing in all this. We don't know if he's getting paid. And judging by LeVar's cheeky grin at the end of the ad where he's sneaking into the fridge for cherries, who knows if we'll ever really understand it. Because the other portion of all this, and wondering who's getting what, is that this was his 16th birthday they dropped this for. And he got a Lamborghini for his birthday. Like, this kid's going to show up to Chino Hills in a Lamborghini.
If you were in an NFL
his other brother, doesn't his other brother have a Ferrari?
Yes. And so I ask you, when you were in a locker room, if you had shown up to your professional sports career in a Lamborghini, what's the reaction?
If I had shown up where in a Lamborghini?
No, in a Lamborghini. You show up in a Lamborghini. You drive up to practice in a Lamborghini. How are all of the other players, if he makes the NBA eventually, how's everybody else going to react to Lamborghini pulling up?
Well, in the NBA, listen, that's a dime a dozen. Like, I saw Antonio Brown pull up on the lot in Pittsburgh in a Rolls Royce and didn't bat an eye. Like, that's how guys live. But pulling up to high school like that, like, I drove an Envoy. I drove a GMC Envoy in high school.
That's a big boy car for you, though.
It was nice, though. Right? I put some subwoofers in the back. I was that guy. I was so obnoxious. I beat down the block with that thing.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really bad.
I had a Dodge K car is what they were called because I'm so old. The thing was just, like, shaped like a K. It was the ugliest thing.
Can we ask people that? 888-729-3776. What was your high school car? If you were driving a Lambo, let us know, because I want to talk to someone with experience in this field.
And, like, mine needed to be painted. Like, it was rough. There was nothing, like, it rattled as I pulled in. I mean, 888-729-3776. What was your first high school car? Because I want to know if anybody else had a Lamborghini. I think that's incredible. It's a nice little moment by him.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million, what color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
My Golic Jr., I'm Jason Fitz. It's The Right Time with Bomani Jones. You can get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at mgolicjr57 for him. I'm at Jason Fitz. Get out just there, hang out with us. So We'll get to this conversation in a second with you guys about the cars that you drove in high school, because it's amazing how many of you want to chime in on it. We love it. But, Mike, I have to talk to you a little bit about an article that's up there on Sports Illustrated. Albert Breer polled some anonymous executives, 3 anonymous execs, and 1 coach to talk about the Colin Kaepernick situation and why or if he's being blackballed. And it's interesting to me because the common argument from them was that you can't say that he's being blackballed looking at, for example, Robert Griffin III, and also looking at, for example, the fact that you would have to tailor an offense specifically around him to be effective, and it doesn't make sense to have your top offense, your main offense, playing one particular style, and then your backup playing another particular style. Now, I look at that, and you know more about football than I do. Most of these people polled, I'm sure, are smart football minds. But I look at it as, for example, a Raiders fan and say, I'm not sure that I can definitively say that E.J. Manuel or Connor Cook is a better backup option for Oakland than Colin Kaepernick. So does it make sense to you when you look at it and you think, okay, Colin Kaepernick is so specialized he can only run a particular type of offense?
No, and I think that kind of got borne out the second that a coach left and he came in and he operated under a new system, right? Like, you can't get much more of a stark departure from what Jim Harbaugh was running than what Chip Kelly was running. I understand both of them made use somewhat of read option elements, but Alex Smith was running that too, and we don't seem to have a problem with him having a job on the other end. Like, there's just so many places. Like, the weird thing for me about this is we got to this place a long time ago with the anthem protest where people said, all right, we're not really saying anything new when we talk about this. And if we're doing that here, I think I heard Dan Levitar bring this up on SportsCenter, that everyone in the sports talk vein has kind of grown tired of this because there aren't a lot of new angles to this. And that comes on the other side where it's us in the media being accused of caping for Colin Kaepernick and trying to get him a job. Well, then we get this piece written up that just posits a bunch of old reasons that we've already worked through as to why Colin Kaepernick's not having a job. Like, he's a system guy. What about RG3? Because every black mobile quarterback is the same guy who remains unsigned. Like, RG3 didn't go out and protest the anthem, so that's not a factor in why he's unsigned. We've seen RG3 much more severely injured over the course of this. Like, there's just a litany of reasons I don't feel like I should have to explain why their situations aren't comparable. And yet we're hearing these same recycled takes, but because they're coming from anonymous execs, we're supposed to believe that they have any more validity than they did before.
Well, doesn't at some point an exec in the NFL have some validity? And I know that we turn around and we sort of roll our eyes at the words anonymous in any of these, or sources say in any of these. But I can also see why, given the firestorm that is around this, wouldn't you agree that if you were an NFL executive and you had this opinion, you probably wouldn't want to go on record with it? You don't want the backfire that comes from it. So the only way you're going to talk is anonymously. And if these are execs and coaches that are in the thick of it saying it, that has more validity than you and I and any of the other shows on ESPN saying it, doesn't it?
I guess, but I know enough football people that have gone out and given us concrete examples. Because that's the one thing. This was the narrative very early on, and I think I might have even fallen into some of the trappings. And then you go back and you start to look, and you have people that are actually going to pay attention enough to look and not just take it at face value and say, well, that's not, these things aren't exactly true. And again, when you compare this all through the lens of, well, this is also talking about right now when we've had these expanded rosters where he's clearly better than a lot of other guys. Like, man, if you want to say that behind the scenes we don't know how much Colin has asked for, and that could be a legitimate thing brought up in all of this. If you can bring up behind the scenes proof that Colin Kaepernick has asked that he wants to be a starter, and that's a factor in all this. But when before you've talked about people saying diminished skill set coupled with not wanting to deal with the hassle, and then you come out and say, well, he's a system guy, and all these things that we already left aside before, that most of the people arguing on that side left behind the fore, I'm just less inclined to take this seriously.
In your mindset, you mentioned the expanded rosters. And for anyone that doesn't know, rosters used to have multiple cuts. Right now, most rosters are at 90, and typically they would have gone from 90 to 75, 75 to 53. That's not the way they're doing it this year for the first time. All the rosters are sitting at 90, and then this weekend they'll go to 53. But there's another curious aspect of this. The contracts in the NFL, once you pass the beginning of the league season, contracts are week to week. Is there any logic to bringing in Colin Kaepernick at that point when you don't have to commit to him for an entire season if you don't think he's a good enough player?
Well, I mean, You mean contracts are week to week?
Well, I mean, if you're an NFL veteran and you signed on the 5th day of the league year and you're cut after 2 weeks, you're only paid for 2 weeks. If you're an NFL veteran and you're on the rosters today and you make the roster on the opening day, then this year's salary is guaranteed.
Well,
so
then
there's a difference. If you're a $7 million player, that's the difference between paying you $7 million or the difference between paying you 2/16 of $7 million.
Well, then again, all of these reasons are even less valid, right? Because if you're going to bring a guy in for a couple of weeks of spot duty when you supposedly have to design this whole elaborate system around him and he doesn't fit what you're doing, like that's an even more ridiculous premise. So if that ends up coming to fruition, then it proves even more with the lies. Where like we've had owners stand up and tell us what the trepidation is on their side of things. And if those are the guys actually calling the shots and making the decisions, then I don't know why we're going to act like we were being lied to there. Like when they were forthright enough to say, like, we're worried about the backlash we're getting for fans. When Steve Bisciotti's out here saying, pray for us while we make this decision, like he wasn't praying for us to figure out how to integrate the minor portions of the read option into the offense.
Fair point. That's absolutely a fair point. But at some point, like, whose word can we take then? If we can't take the word of anonymous execs, then at this point, whose word will you take as sort of a valid
Did you hear what
reason?
you just said?
Yeah.
If we won't take the word of anonymous executives?
But then, I mean, that begs the question of whose word will you take? Like, who can come out and give you a valid reason that will make sense?
If a coach wanted to stand up in front of a microphone with his face in front of it, the way everyone else having this conversation would, and said, these are the reasons I don't believe Colin is signed, I'd be a little more inclined to hear him out than a guy who can sit behind a closed door and say all this stuff that feeds into larger points that, again, we've had all these talks on the outside, and we've largely debated them. Now, again, they can be very, honest and open and forthright about these being their honest decisions, but that doesn't necessarily make them right. Like, that just might indicate that you've got guys making decisions that are suspect at best.
I guess. I mean, the lose-lose situation out of it is obviously until he signs to a roster, if he signs to a roster, all we can do is speculate to what's going on. And then the flip side of the problem is that for all that speculation, we can't trust anything we're being told by anybody in the process. You're just going to constantly run in a circle on it is what it feels like. It feels like we can't actually get any definitive stance on it because we don't take anybody's word on what they're saying. And in the process, nobody's signing Kaepernick. So the process never ends. It's just it's a cycle over and over again. And I think that
there's no cycle. No one's going to sign him. He's not getting signed. Like we've been playing this game where we just keep moving the goalpost back for a really long time, seeing what happens. He's not going to get signed, and us trying to parse through reasons why while we're getting quotes anonymously from guys that can say, this is it. We operate from a position of power because we're in the NFL and we're inside the machine, but not so much so that we're actually willing to tag our name on a lot of this. Basically tells me that, all right, you know what? They're going to prop whatever reason they want up there, and Colin's not going to get signed, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
And at what point then do we accept that? If that's just the way it's going to be, at what point do we just say, to Levertard's point, at what point do we just stand up and say, all right, guys, like it or not, this is just the way it's going to be?
Well, it's not a this is the way it's going to be thing. It's accepting it that way. What Dan was talking about was from a content standpoint like this, where it says, how many times can we do this? But my point is we should kind of hold that accountable to the other side, right? Like when we worked through all these arguments and we said, well, there's nothing new to talk about. Well, if you say the same thing over again from a place of anonymity, then you're not really giving us anything new to talk about either, but you're trying to act like it's somehow the defining, exclamation point on this conversation, and I just don't really care.
Yeah, well, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just don't think that there's a win for most executives to come out and say if this is what they believe, whether we think it's right or wrong, it's certainly not a win for whoever this executive is from whatever team they are. That they represent. There's not a win for that executive come out and say this, even if it's what they believe, because the backfire will be massive, and they will suddenly be in the news for every reason they don't want to be in the news. So
because they'd be asked to prove it.
Maybe, but even above and beyond that, if we're talking about just the conversation your owner does or doesn't want you having, don't you think there's a spot where multiple owners in the NFL are going to turn around and say, why would you come out and have this statement? Why would you put us in this position where we as an organization are defending it?
Listen, I get the role that anonymous sources play when it comes to breaking stories and things like that, and we just had one of those NFL Top 100 lists where it allows coaches to speak more freely on certain guys and in certain veins. But in this case, it just seems like it gives you the ability to duck. It gives you the ability to justify completely why you're doing something without having to really answer for it personally, without having to back it up in ways that people can challenge publicly. It just seems like you're avoiding the fight just so you can say you're right, because in the end, the results are going to back up your point.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Right Time with Bomani Jones. 888-SAY-ESPN. 888-729-3776. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. We talked about it earlier. The top 100 list came out recently, and on the ESPN top 100 list for players around the NFL, Aaron Donald sat at number 3. That's a pretty substantial number. And despite that, I'm looking at it, and my mind's a little blown that the number 3 player in the league, at least according to one survey, the number 3 player in the league isn't in camp, and it hasn't been the end-all, be-all only story that everybody wants to talk about. I'm surprised that Aaron Donald not being in camp with the Rams isn't a bigger deal.
It's flown under the radar. Really, a lot of big headlines surrounding the lack of availability for players throughout this offseason has flown under the radar. We did this with Andrew Luck's shoulder until very recently, with Cam Newton not being on the field practicing with the team until recently. It's been amazing what we've pushed aside in favor of all of the other headlines we discussed, but Aaron Donald now seeming to be the last one coming to a head outside of Andrew Luck, who we hear is going to be out probably into the season, and Cam Newton, who's back on the field. This is the best thing the Rams have going for them, and he's not with your team right now.
I mean, you really think about it. You have Aaron Donald and Le'Veon Bell, 2 guys that are stars in this league that haven't reported to their team yet, and we don't know what Aaron Donald's point or his approach is when he's going to come in. If these were 2 rookies that were holding out, the world would be just, the sky would be falling. It's not that long ago in this CBA, before they changed everything with the rookie contracts, that a first overall pick holding out, a Jamarcus Russell holding out, was the end of the world. Now you have actual, not possible stars. You have actual stars not playing with their teams, and we're just sort of like, it'll figure itself out. I'm surprised by it.
I'm surprised by it just because if you're the Rams, who else are you paying at this point?
Right.
Like, who else are you going to do this with? And this is another one of those places where the P word comes back into place and we get a little precedent talk. But at the end of the day, if there's one guy, because I've always said this, when you look around any football locker room, but even an NFL locker room, guys understand that all things are not created equal. Like, I never sat in my locker room at Notre Dame and thought, man, you know what? I deserve to be treated the same way that Michael Floyd gets treated, or the same way that Zach Martin gets treated, or the same way one of our quarterbacks gets treated. Because I wasn't as important to the team as those guys, and I wasn't as good as those guys. And if there's any guy in that Rams locker room who can stand up and say he's more important to that team than Aaron Donald, be my guest, because I'll show you the liars in the room on that team. And so if you're going to pay anyone, you pay him. You paid Tavon Austin wideout 1 money. He's not a wide receiver 1. Why would you not pay Aaron Donald best defensive tackle in the game money when he's actually the best defensive tackle in football?
And some can argue the best defensive player in all of football. I mean, there's a point where he holds the leverage here. Whatever he wants, he can ask for. Stephen A. Smith talked about it, and as always, you know when Stephen A. talks about it, it's entertaining. This is what he had to say.
I don't love the fact that Aaron Donald still hasn't been taken care of by the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, the inept franchise that this franchise has been, staining cities along the way, first St. Louis and now L.A. The audacity, the unmitigated gall for them to play hardball and not take care of this guy. I mean, you got to be kidding me. I don't know how many times I got to go on this damn tirade. Take care of Aaron Donald if you are the Los Angeles Rams. The nerve of you to do otherwise. Who the hell do you think you are? You took care of Tavon Austin. You overpaid him, even though I like him. But you can't take care of a dude who is universally recognized as a top 10 player in the NFL, who wants to be there, who is completely justified in not stepping on the field and jeopardizing his own health before he gets a hefty contract, and you can't find a way to take care of him? Shame on you. Absolute positive shame. I mean, just the nerve. I'd expect something like this if Jeff Fisher was still there. But due to the fact that you came to your senses and got rid of him, one would believe that you were pointing sensibly in the right direction. And now we've learned otherwise. It's just a damn embarrassment. Plain and simple.
Jeff Fisher sitting in his house in Tennessee thinking, how did I get dragged into that all of a sudden? I mean, love that from Stephen A. You agree, though?
If you're playing Stephen A. bingo at home, by the way, you're banging on your table because you just won. We were one temerity away from really hitting like the full blackout on the bingo board. I heard unmitigated gall, and I rose up out of my seat. I actually stole that and used that on a podcast earlier today, too. That's how much Stephen A. is embedded in my brain at this point. We were sitting there during the break and we're like, how do we want to do this Aaron Donald thing? And Nuno goes, we got a Stephen A. rant on this, and the discussion was done. I didn't even know why he asked. Like, yep. Stephen A. talks and he's going on the air.
You lead with that in the future, Nuno, by the way. It's like, hey, guys, before you guys talk about anything, let me tell you what Stephen A.'s got, because that's an unmitigated gall I've decided we can add to our hashtag shirts that eventually I just want to wear around the Bristol campus of ESPN, which is hashtag unmitigated gall. So when I bump into him, I could try and start a little puffin a war with Stephen A.
I was going to say, you got to lead with those two, and then the back of the shirt, like, you know how they almost do it like bumper sticker style on the lower top part of the shirt, like the tramp stamp area? Mm-hmm. That's where you have ain't it a burger, though.
Ain't it a burger, though. I mean, if you're the Rams and you are in L.A., you are trying to build a fan base, you are trying to build a franchise, and you're trying to distract everybody from the unmitigated disaster that could be Jared Goff. At some point, doesn't showing Aaron Donald a little bit of love and keeping him in the fold and sort of not only signing him, but then going all in on making him the face of the franchise for Los Angeles, doesn't that have some value right now?
Listen, I get that a D tackle is probably not going to sell to an audience, but you look at the rest of that team and forget the on-field trickle-down effect that this has. 28 sacks from 2014 to 2016, 4 more than any other D tackle in the league. 31 QB hits, led the NFL last year. 17 tackles for loss, were tied for the lead last year. How much does that help your young quarterback on the other side to know that your defense could potentially give you extra opportunities by shutting guys down like that? But no. Look at the rest of the locker room and say, if you're not willing to pay that guy, who else in that locker room feels like that organization is really going to be inclined to pay them? Now, I get top guy at the position money is a little different than 4th or 5th down the list, but still, look out in San Diego. Look out in Los Angeles at the Chargers team that came from San Diego. I knew I was going to make that mistake once today. Look at the Chargers. That organization has made a living with their high-profile draft picks. We saw it last year in the stare-down between them and Joey Bosa, not paying their top picks. And everyone around the league knows that reputation of that team. Eli Manning knew it so much back in the day, he refused to go there flat out. And so if you start to build this reputation, it gets talked about. And players know that stuff, and high-profile free agents know it, and everyone else knows on the team, like, man, all right, they're just not going to take care of us no matter what we do.
And I'll argue also fans start to feel it in L.A. too when they look around and say, man, what's wrong with this team that they won't take care of a bona fide superstar on a bad team that needs all the superstars they can get?
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Right Time is brought to you by Firestone Complete Auto Care. Keep cars running newer, longer, whatever you drive a Firestone. Gojo, we'll get into this Steelers beef thing in a second, but I'm still stunned as I look back at this. LaMelo Ball got, for his 16th birthday, essentially LaMelo Ball gets a shoe, his own custom shoe as part of the Big Baller brand line. Which is going to be a value at under $400. So he gets his own shoe.
It's a steal. Wait till it kicks under cost.
Yeah.
Then I'm really getting in on that. Those get down to like $150. I'm in.
Is there a price? There's a price point for you on?
$150, and you get to the one where it's like no shipping, and I can get a promo code that's like another like 15-20% off. I'm in there.
Will you spend like an hour and a half? Because I got one friend that will spend hours looking for a promo code for that extra like free shipping. And I'll come in and be like, dude, you just saved $15, but you spent 2 hours doing it. So I'm not sure it was really worth your time. Do you have like a patience level on that, or are you just committed to the deal?
That's assuming my time's worth something to begin with. I got time, all right? If I'm gonna go and take the time to get the shoes, I'm gonna make sure I get the value. That's just investing in my own happiness on the back end. Well, the cost of doing business. We talked about this.
Not only does he get the shoes, he also gets a Lamborghini. And I'm thinking about it, your last name's Golic, which means you're basically famous, right? I mean, that's what happens. When you're a Golic, you're just automatically famous. Was your first car a Lamborghini?
It's automatically famous.
Yeah, I mean, because your uncle I mean, the first time I
college
ever
years,
worked with...
The college years money is strong, let me tell you.
The first time I ever worked with Mike, I told my wife, Sunny, and when I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm doing a show with Mike Golic Jr., her question to me was, oh, my God, was his dad on Saved by the Bell? And I said, no, that was his uncle. But she still, I think that's the starstruck moment, when your uncle's on Saved by the Bell, Lamborghinis for everybody, right?
Yeah, not so much. I drove a GMC Envoy in high school, but the kicker is that I was the guy that put the really bad set of subwoofers in the back and was just rolling down the street at 7:30 going to school, trying to absolutely rattle the block in Avon, Connecticut, the most white picket fence country club place on earth. So you can imagine it's a little out of character for the area.
What color was the GMC Envoy?
Standard gray, nothing. There was no frills about this thing. Drove well. It was a real beauty. I miss it every day.
Yeah, my first car was they called them at the time it was a Dodge Aries. It was called a K car, and they called them that in the late 80s because by the time I got my first car in the 90s, it was used and had 150,000 miles on it. So I get this Dodge Aries K car that was shaped kind of like a K. It was the ugliest car you could ever possibly imagine. It was sort of a box. It was like a silver needed to be painted box that rattled its way into school. I was proud of that thing, though, man. I was proud of it. I had to work hard for that.
Oh, listen, especially whether you're working for it, however you come to the car, you never forget your first because it's the first time you've got that bit of agency to be like, I got my license. I got a ride. I can go where I want to go. I can see who I want to see. Once you get out of that weird learner's permit phase that they force you through in Connecticut, I can ride around with my guys in the car, my friends in the car. It's a whole new world. It's a dazzling place you never knew.
888 say ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. What was your first car? I'm curious to get a little perspective here on LaMelo and his Lamborghini. What was your first car? 888 say ESPN, 888-729-3776. You can also tweet us on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at mgolicjr57 and at Jason Fitz. So of your friends, I had one friend, and we're still close, actually, and he got a Camaro. And that was a Camaro in 93, 94. That was a big, big deal. He got a Camaro with T-tops on it. Oh, man, that thing, whew. He was the popular friend because he had the nicest car. But some people hated on him a little bit because he had that was for our area. That was a swanky car. Did you have a friend that had the swanky car everybody loved or hated?
I had a friend who drove a Ford F650. It's basically the size of a dump truck, and it had a boat horn on it. And he would ride down. There was one street to get to the parking lot of our school. You drove down that street, and it went past all the windows of the main rooms of the homerooms when you were in high school. And so we'd all sit there and watch, and he'd show up late for school, driving a dump truck, and he would lean on the boat horn coming down the street so that the whole school had to stop and acknowledge. It wasn't enough that his car took up 4 parking spots in the, once you got over to the student parking lot. So he put everyone on notice. He was definitely that guy.
Bruce in Mississippi, thanks for hanging on, Bruce. What do you got, man?
No problem. Gentlemen, first of all, as a survivor of Katrina and Biloxi, thoughts and prayers to Houston. My first car was a 1971 Lincoln Mercury Capri. I went in and paid $2,120 and tried to talk the salesman out of the $20. But the kicker was it had an 8-track, so I was the go-to. Everybody said, hey, let's pile into Bruce's car. Didn't know you can get 9 people into a Pinto. And the kicker was also the salesman tried to upgrade me to the 6-cylinder motor. I said, how much? He goes, $19. I look at him like he was from Mars. I said, I'm not made of money, Gentlemen, thank you for the entertainment. You take care, guys.
Thanks for the call. I'm not made of money, man.
Oh, listen, it's amazing how many people you can fit in when you're really trying, though. I remember, in college, when we were sitting around and we'd go to early morning workouts and we'd be leaving our apartment, and it'd be me and 4 other big football players. Kyle Rudolph, who plays for the Vikings now. We would pile into his. We just called it the hoopty. This thing was as beat up. We just got in every morning in the freezing cold and prayed to God it started. It was a really old Nissan Altima, and we would just sit there and we would listen to that thing turn over and just pray it started every day. And we fit all 5 of us into that going to morning workouts for probably 2 years in a row before we finally had to put her out to pasture.
Bob in North Carolina. Bob, what do you got, man?
Hey, I cut grass for 2 years to buy a Mustang convertible. I got best car in high school and still own it. I'm a doctor now in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I still love that thing, man. Never forget your first, baby.
That's amazing that you still own it. I love all of that, Bob. Thanks for the call, man.
I was going to say, never forget your first. He never left his first. He married the high school sweetheart. Took her to the prom, and then it's like, you know what? We're going to make a life together, you and me. Doctor, he didn't forget where he came from, man. That might win the day.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that you slip that in. It gives it all the extra credence, too. And it's like, hey, man, I worked all this summer. I cut grass. I saved up. I bought the car. I'm a doctor now, which says, hey, I can buy whatever I want in this car world. And no, he's still got that first one. That is sweet. I love everything about that.
That's the kid who shows up to training camp in his mom's minivan's like, you know what? Even after I get that contract, I'm going to hold it down because she got me here.
Oh, I love all of it. It's far better than my K car, but none of it's quite as good as LaMelo's Lamborghini. It's still stunning to me.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
He's my Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. This is The Right Time with Bomani Jones. 888 say ESPN, 888-729-3776. ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. Guys, as we get into this hour, and we've been reminding you throughout the course of the day, don't forget, it's the day of giving. You can get out there and help people affected by Hurricane Harvey by visiting redcross.org/ESPN, redcross.org/ESPN, or if you have your phone right now, you can just pull it out and text the word Harvey in all caps, HARVEY, to 90999. That's all you have to do is text the word Harvey to 90999, and it'll make a $10 donation to the Red Cross. It just adds it to your phone bill. It's super easy. Everybody can be a part of helping as we come together to help the city of Houston in the aftermath of Harvey. It's just Harvey, 90999. Super easy to do and be part of helping them recover. Mike Golic Jr., you and I, we've had some heavy conversations. I think that the sports world has gotten heavy over the last year, and plus, longer than the last year. But between the Colin Kaepernick situation, between CTE, there's a lot of heavy conversations that we are sort of forced to have in sports now that I think 5-10 years ago just weren't a part of this climate. And now they are. And head issues is something that we've talked a little about, and everybody's talked a little about on the station throughout. But we have a first at this point because we've seen athletes walk away, and some have walked away because of damage that it causes to the brain. But for the first time, we have an actual one of our colleagues, Ed Cunningham, commentator for ESPN for NFL and for college football, has decided to step away. When you saw that, because he's stepping away because he doesn't want to be a part of this at this point. When you saw it, what did it say to you?
It said that Ed was no longer comfortable with his role in the machine because you hear his comments, and to be clear, when he first resigned, he said he wanted to spend more time. He's got two young kids.
Yep.
He's got a production company that he works with. He's got other things that he was interested in. And then he said after the fact, I also pointed out that this was something I'd grown increasingly uncomfortable with. And for a guy that's also pointed out and said he doesn't believe the NFL or college football should go away, he wants to be a part of helping to make things safer going forward and be a part of these solutions and believes it can be that way. I can also understand that it's a lot different when you're inside of all of it and you feel like you're not helping. You feel like you're just perpetuating the things that have been going on. And Ed's been very vocal during broadcasts about pointing out instances where he believes, a kid's been put in a compromising position by a coach or medical staff. And so he's been chipping away at it in his own way, but just felt like it wasn't enough to counteract what he felt he was contributing to.
Well, he went on Outside the Lines and talked a little bit about what changed his view. This is what Ed had to say.
The tipping point was, I think, becoming a father. I have 2 young sons, and I was seeing these as I got older, these kids, at 19, 20, 23 years old. I don't want my now 5-year-old to be hit like that. I really think for me, the last few years of becoming a father I don't see them as products anymore. These are kids.
Well, and at some point, I respect that view. You and I have both been cautious in sort of jumping in too hard on the CTE conversation as information continues to come out, right? So, but you have to look at it and say, I'm not a father. I can only imagine that being a father would change the way you want your legacy to be viewed.
Well, we're all a victim, or not, a victim's the wrong word, but we're all a product of what we experience, right? Like, my dad's a father, and he looks at all of this and says, not only does he not regret playing football, but based on talks that I've had with him and my brothers had with him, he doesn't regret the fact that he allowed us to play football, because it wasn't anything we were forced to do, but he allowed it to happen. And so you can argue that a lot of people were saying you're still putting your kids in that position. But he didn't regret that, because in his lifetime, the things that he's seen and been affected by haven't been the same. Like, Ed talks about the fact that he played with Dave Durson, he played with Andre Waters, a guy who my dad also was a teammate with and understood in that way. But Ed saw these guys up close, and it shaped his worldview, seeing the things that these guys went to. You listen to families of some of the people that have donated their brains to this concussion study, who have seen their loved ones' lives cut short because of what they believe is a connection with football. And you can understand, like, I'm never going to fault these people for being angry and sad and looking for answers, because I don't know what I would do in the same position. All I can say is, based on where I sit, I don't exactly see it the same way. But again, these are all of the things we have to kind of acknowledge in this, that based on what Ed's seen, yeah, I'd probably be a little more leery of this too. And being a father certainly changes a lot of these things. Well,
and it's interesting because everything in our time getting to know each other, you're very methodical in the way you do a lot of your sort of weighing processes, right? And I think we're similar in that sense. And so we can have a conversation about where this is and what it means and what CTE, what we know, what we don't know. And we've had that conversation. What's interesting about this is for someone to feel like they've made a decision on where they fall on it, and they don't want to be part of the legacy around it. That's a very strong statement, and one that while I don't necessarily see everything the same way that Ed does, I respect the heck out of Ed standing up and making the decision to do it the way he's choosing to do it. He talked a little bit also about fans disliking the conversation and the dangers around football. This is what he said on Outside the Lines.
I think people don't want to hear someone on Saturday griping about the safety of the game. And that's true. And that's why I stepped away. I totally see that point of view. Like, leave it alone. Don't go there. But for me, I couldn't step away. I've been at this game in every fall since 1983, played, coach, broadcast. And I do think the game can get safer. And I would like to be a part of that discussion.
Yeah, I think about this a lot in terms of this industry, the way we talk about things, because I see it from a perspective of someone who's dealing with all of these things every day. And I know you talk about sports as escapism a lot, and this is a corollary of that. This is another version of escapism. I don't want to hear about the fallibility of these people. And I often wonder, because the cries that I hear in a place like Twitter, where you can get reaction, but it's curated to an extent. It's curated by who I follow and who, the people I follow retweet and all of these things. And a lot of the reaction I see to the CTE conversation, the concussion conversation, comes from people in the media, people like Ed, maybe that weren't former players, but that are at least around these guys and see them enough to know them as human beings. Fans, I wonder often how much they really care, because in this concussion conversation, I've always said, as much as people, when you have an interest in football, tend to shy away from your opinion because they say you have a vested interest, you profit and benefit from the game continuing to succeed, I say, no. I benefit from the most crystal clear information possible, because my dad, friends, me, my brother are the ones whose lives and brains are at stake. Like, I think I would care more than anyone. But I wonder if fans on the outside who watch and listen to all this say, no, we just want to continue to believe that these guys are going to go out there and perform and be happy and do all these things and really actually care about the safety of people they don't know.
I will come in and say it's a limited sample size, I know, but we did, when I was sitting in for Jalen and Jacoby about a month ago, I gave everybody the opportunity to just call in, and we took as many calls as we could take that day, and the whole premise was, you don't even have to tell us who you are, where you're from, just tell me this: do you care about CTE or the brains of football players at all? And we took calls throughout the entire course of the show. We took one call that cared, and every other call that we took was essentially saying, nope, just watching football. And I did it that way because I'm not here to judge anybody for it, because, as you know, and you just alluded to, I talk all the time about escapism. I think that we live in a world where when you go to a concert, you're not looking at Dave Matthews Band and wondering what the health insurance situation is for those guys. Like, we don't think about the real life application of what some of these things mean for the people you get your entertainment for. So I am a big believer that at some point fans just want their entertainment and their sports to be fun and don't want to think. And I've always tried to provide that platform. That being said, again, for Ed to come in and say, hey, I'm not comfortable. I mean, I think he kind of acknowledged in that audio, look, I think that fans may not want to hear about it, And that's fine. I'm going to respect that by not being on the broadcast, because that way I don't have to be stuck in the middle of between what I believe people should hear and what I believe people want to hear.
And I get what you're saying about people wanting their entertainment, free of a lot of the trappings of normal life. But man, that seems like a position that's awfully convenient for the people that are lucky enough to be able to have that. Like, Ed's worried because he knows. People in the media, people like me around sports, are worried about these things enough to care about them because we know and experience them. Like, it's a lot easier to put off someone else's problems and not worry about a group of people when you don't actually know them. And I think just saying that because I don't know you, I can't extend any of the empathy that just treats you like a human being, that's sad, man. That's a weird place to be at for all of us.
But let's defend the fan, though. How many fans have grown up in a next man up culture where you're told constantly, no matter what happens, it's next man up? And we live in a world where, to use a very drastic example, we've seen players paralyzed on the field, and it shuts down the mindset of the fan for about a week before everybody sort of resets. That's been the fan mentality for a very long time. I don't think that that's a new thing. We've seen the dangers of physicality on a football field for generations, and it's not something that shuts people down from watching the sport.
I'm not asking it to shut it down, but I'm saying when it comes up to poo-poo it away and say, well, I don't want to hear about the realities of this. I just want you to keep giving me the thing I need to feel good on Sunday. Like, no. You should have to deal with the crystal clear picture of this. Know what you're watching. And listen, I know what I'm watching, and I still watch it, but I'm cognizant of it. I understand the things that are happening. If you want to just hide your head in the sand on it, I don't know if that's any way to go through life.
Maybe. I mean, I'll come back again. I'll come back to the defense of the people that called in that I talked to, and it's not necessarily burying your head in the sand. It's acknowledging it and then saying, yeah, but I don't really care. And that's, it's harsh to say.
Is that better?
I don't know.
Doesn't sound like it, man. You may not want to judge. I'll judge.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more, and don't forget to